are open obviously now. So welcome to everyone. Not too sure how many we have in or how long it takes for people to come in, but just like maybe to welcome everyone here to this spotlight session, and on the theme of today, and looking forward. We're looking forward to building for the future, and building your business for what has been a surpriseful future, certainly over the last few years. Just by way of introduction, my name is Clodagh Whelan. I work with the local enterprise office in Wicklow, and I'll give you some more information on what supports may be available relevant to this topic at the end of the session. But this session is about building a sustainable business and the practicalities of how you do that. We've all heard in business about building sustainable business model, which has been about the kind of the repeat business from your customers, and tapping into the right market and making sure that the bottom line of the business is sustainable in terms of profit to reinvest in the business. So historically, the bottom line in business was profit, but going into the future, the bottom line is the planet. And we've all heard about the imperative for being or having less impact in terms of the challenges we create for the planet. Customers and consumers are becoming more aware of the impact of their purchases on the planet. So again, that is part of the driver for your business, not just in terms of the planet, but in terms of your customers as well, and what they're looking for. But in that context, while there's a lot of talk about becoming more climate friendly and going green, what does that actually mean? And at a practical level, how do you build a sustainable business? And where do you start even? So our two speakers in this session will help to answer those questions. We've Sarah Blake from Earthology and Clare Tait from Chocolatey.com. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah now, and to just take you through answering some of those questions. So Sarah, what does sustainability actually mean? I'm sure we've all different perspectives of it, so maybe you can kind of help guide us.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I hope everybody's up for a slightly engaged session. We've got like a power kind of half hour of trying to take you through something which isn't rocket science, but it is and can be a little bit complicated. So we're going to have a little bit of interaction, and I am going to do a couple of slides because I think it's important just to kind of go through where we're at today. So I'm just going to present the couple of slides here. So I suppose what we wanted to, between myself and Claire, what we wanted to do is to kind of give you sort of an overview that you can kind of take away, and we can talk about the supports after that are there to kind of take you through the next steps. So my mantra is very much, I can't do everything, but I can do something. And obviously you may have seen Greta Thunberg's blah, blah, blah speech. She was very forceful in her words that we really do need to do something more for the environment. So just briefly what Earthology does, to give you a bit of context, we do businesses, communities and individuals, and we help to guide them on their sustainability journey. So today we've got 3 steps. I've tried to distill it down for you very briefly. We've got purpose and mission, which is very important when it comes to sustainability and embedding it into your strategy. We've got the sustainability lens, so we'll be looking at kind of the key things there, and then setting these all important targets to reduce your environmental impact and some top tips. So I'm going to try and use menti.com. If you have your phone at hand, the easiest thing is to go to your camera, take a picture of the QR code, and that will ask you to open in Menti, and you can go straight to the Menti page, or you can go into menti.com and enter the code 51124749. Now, if you're on your phone, this is a little bit more tricky to do, so don't worry about it. It's not particularly important. It just would help in terms of our interaction, let's just say, for the next kind of 15, 20 minutes or so. So hopefully we can make that work. And I just want to ask a question of the people that are in this room. And look, some people have already logged in. So if you can see that there, menti.com 51124749, that's the code. So I have got a little quiz as well to keep you all awake. This is very much an engaging session that we're trying to get people you know, to be awake, let's say, because we're already been looking at the screen for 3 hours, so we're already a bit like, whoa. So yeah, brilliant. You're all making it work. And sorry to anybody who can't make it work. And if you're watching this on playback, I'm really sorry. You can't use Menti, unfortunately, in a playback environment. So one little thing I wanted to do was to ask you a little question. And the first thing is, replacing a bulb with an LED light will save how much a year? So it's multiple choice. How much do you think per bulb you could save? Is it €2.50? Is it €3.75? Or is it €7? So when you change a regular bulb to an LED, how much do you think that you can save? Let's see. What did everybody think? Okay, brilliant. You're all pretty good there. Yeah, so it's actually, I think €7 is quite a lot over the course of a year. So I would just say that's the one thing. If you're sitting at home in your house, or your house is your home office, or any of those things, just think that you could start saving if you went round and how many bulbs there are in your house. And this is a, you know, Colmus is saving over the year. So something to think about. And let's see who was the fastest. Let's see. Oh, looks like Roberta. So well done, Roberta. Very good. We have another question coming up later as well. So what we want to do is, let me just flick on to the next screen, is define sustainability. So, you know, sustainable business for a long time was talked about as, you know, sustainable business was the quality of being able to continue over a long period of time. Your sustainable business could keep going and keep going and keep going. But now sustainability is about the quality of causing little or no damage to the environment, and therefore being able to continue for a long time. So if we think about, you know, clothes or those kind of things, if you're somebody who sells clothes, you are not going to be able to continue to sell clothes if there is no cotton available to make those clothes. So if we don't look after the cotton in the fields and we stop using pesticides and all that kind of stuff, otherwise, you know, your business does not have a future. And this is so important when we talk about the data centers and things in Ireland. They're sucking up huge amounts of electricity and water, and we're becoming a hub for data centers, and it's great for employment and all that kind of stuff. But we really have to start thinking about how they can generate their own electricity rather than relying on the grid, because the electricity might not always be there. So we just want to know from you guys in this session, myself and Claire, what do you want to learn today? Have you come along to find out about sustainability strategy? Have you come along to find out about what you can do from sitting at your desk? Have you come along to find out about you know, the sustainable development goals? So if you could just pop anything into the Menti chat there, you can see it on the little Menti app. Hopefully we can get a little word cloud going. So if you go back to menti.com on your phone, and regeneration, I like that word. Strategy, excellent. Okay, we're just trying to get an idea of what we can do for you in the next kind of 15-20 minutes, you know. Sustainable manufacturing, Claire's right on that one, so no pressure, Claire. Communicating importance, sustainability in fashion, brilliant. Strategy business plan. Okay, so there's a good bit there about strategy. Just generally, scope 3 emissions. Okay, I kind of ruled out scopes today because I thought that was going to be too complicated, but I can touch on it later. Packaging, brilliant. Claire's got some answers for that. She's definitely going through a lot of that in terms of her business. Zero carbon footprint, yeah, what that means. Daily practices, brilliant. Okay, thanks so much, guys. That's really important, and that will really help us to kind of see, you know, where we're going to go. Oh, it's still coming in. What can you do from the desk? Exactly. So important, and there are so many things you can do at home. Okay, so just conscious of time. So let's just find out where are your businesses from those questions. I guess you're all very different businesses, so that's fine. Just so we can know, and if you're not on the list, I try to kind of make it like as broad as possible. So if you do websites, you're in technology. If you do coaching, you're in professional services, you know, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so we have a real mixed bag today. Okay, and some retail people, great, because obviously Claire is here, which really helps. And I thought it would be really helpful rather than me blathering on to bring Claire into this. Okay, professional services. Yeah, okay. So, well, we really do have a mix. Okay. Okay, that's going to be challenging, but we will get there. Okay, so let me crack on. So I think we've talked about this a little bit today, but sustainability does come right back. Strategy is right back to your purpose. And we talked about just getting started and stuff today, and there's been a lot of JFDI going on, which I think is so important. But when you go back to the purpose of your business, you will really start to discover where your impacts are when it comes to the environment. So why does your business exist? Like, is it to is it to help customers to do a certain thing? Is it, is it just to buy more product? Is it to particularly solve them a problem? I think Anya kind of referred to that a little bit this morning, but like, what problem are you solving? But that's really key to kind of know. What does your business do? Is it, is it a professional service? Are you in technology? All those kind of things. Who do you do business with? Who are your suppliers? What sort of impacts do you have coming into the business and going out of the business? So if you're in retail or packaging, you know what I mean? You've got packaging and stuff coming into the business with the product, and then you've got it going out of the business when you post it. Where does your business operate? Thinking about kind of like, is it in the UK, Ireland? Is it in, globally? Like, where are people going to be affected by your product? Where are they going to use your product? And then how do you do business? So obviously this is the point about being ethical and all that kind of stuff, which is so important. And I've just put in there this sort of insight survey from Deloitte, because I think it's so important about what consumers identify when they're making a decision about your brand and whether to use you. You can see that 28% it's as much important to them how you look after your business and how you treat your employees as it is to your product and that kind of stuff. And you can see there 20% was on the environment. Now that's back in 2019, and I'm sure the stats have changed a little bit since then. But shortly behind the environment is 19% want to know, what are you doing about your community? So something that myself and Clare are trying to get across today is that sustainability isn't just about the environment. It's about how you do business. It's about why you do business. It's about your supply chain. Is there slave labor in your supply chain? If you buy in cotton, if you buy in stuff from China to make jewelry, it's all those kind of things. It's not just about kind of like, how did it get here? The emissions, was it flown? Was it on a ship? And all that kind of stuff. Next, we want to think about, I suppose, looking at your business through the sustainability lens. So here at Earthology, we have worked, and I've actually now got 2 companies. This is a long story, but I won't go into it. But Earthology is also setting up Green Zebra, which is to help very small businesses with their sustainability. And what we do is we look through everything with the sustainability lens, right? So we have come up with these 8 pillars. And number 1 is your strategy. So you really need to get the full benefit of having a greener business. You need to embed it into your strategy. And I can't say this enough, but all of the benefits in terms of employees buying in, of consumers buying in, all of that kind of stuff will make so much difference if it's not an add-on. I just saw something today where there is now a huge backlash to people using recycled materials in their products, because those products at the end of the day probably aren't recyclable, and people take it as what we call greenwashing, i.e. it's just a token effort. Then you need to look at your energy. So for example, with energy, we're all sitting at home, we're on our laptops, we're watching this, and luckily you'd be very pleased to know that laptops use something like 80% less energy than than those old kind of desktops that I certainly had. So I would urge everybody, if you haven't, desktops are much more energy efficient. Energy, you can certainly switch to renewable electricity at home. Very important to make that demand off the grid that we want renewable energy supply. And then to think about saving energy. So there I just pointed out, some of the stuff that comes from the SEAI, which also have great supports if you're trying to cut back on your energy, about the light bulbs. Then water. Obviously, only 1% of the available water on the planet is suitable for drinking and manufacturing and all those kind of things. The rest is pretty much salt water or unavailable. So we only have a very small amount of water. So we need to make sure we conserve it. Again, if your business is something that, consumes a lot of water, or you have an office and you have toilets and all that kind of stuff, certainly you need to cut down on your water. Waste is very important. And obviously, that, I suppose, that incorporates plastics and things like that, because obviously plastic is huge at the moment in terms of the environment, and we really do need to think about using less plastic, but less waste. It touches on the circular economy, but it really means, when you get some packaging in, can you send it back to the supplier? Do you need to deal with it? Can you send it back to them and say, actually, no, I don't want all that cardboard, thank you very much. You can deliver whatever it is, but you can take that away with you. And if that supplier won't do it, then you talk to somebody else. Then transport, obviously, how do you get your services and goods? How do you get around, as your business? I mean, the little boxes I have here beside me don't fit very well on my bike. But Pauline Logan, who supports the local, the Leo Women in Business group, will know that I am an avid cyclist, and I cycle pretty much everywhere that I can to my meetings in Dublin. It's brilliant because it makes me think. It's mindful before I get on the bike. I'm kind of thinking, okay, what do I need? I get on the bike, I'm cycling, I'm looking around at what's happening, I'm noticing the change of seasons, a bit of mindfulness, obviously depending on the traffic and all that kind of stuff. But just think about transport, how you get around, how do your goods get around, how do you get things to people. Then supply chain, and this is key because, again, as we just touched on at the beginning, supply chain goes right back to your suppliers. So is there child labor in your supply chain? Is there a decent wage for your workers in your supply chain? Is there plastic in your supply chain? And these are what we call upstream and downstream things. So stuff that comes into your business is upstream, and then stuff that goes out of your business is downstream. And then we can, if somebody wants to touch on scope 3, that's all to do with your emissions, and we can talk about that in our questions. So then biodiversity. Now, obviously, people are aware of this. We're aware of what we need to do for the bees and all that kind of stuff, but biodiversity is like one of the absolutely most essential pillars for life on Earth. And if we don't mind it, we're going to find ourselves in an awful pickle. So again, look at your business. Does it, if you're sitting here like me behind the desk at your home office and you're thinking, well, I don't really have any biodiversity impacts in my business. I don't, buy cotton. I don't, whatever. Well, what do you do outside in your garden? Do you have a window box? Can you do something to help those pollinators out there? And then finally, people. It's so important that people, wherever they are, if they're working for you, if they're your customers, all of those things, that they have an understanding of your commitment to sustainability, that the people in your supply chain know what you demand of them, that your employees will understand what it is that you want to do and achieve. So how do we go about doing all of this? So the first thing is to prioritize. And once you've looked at your business through those kind of 8 headings, you can start to go, okay, so what's important? I'm in professional services. I don't really have, I can't see where my impacts are. So obviously that could be in your technology. It could be in your customer base. Likely as professional services, as like Facebook, Facebook compared to Amazon are not going to have such a big carbon footprint. But what they do is they have a very important voice when it comes to the climate and the environment and all that kind of thing. So if you are in professional services, think about like how you can get your clients to kind of, manifest, I suppose, a better environment and all that kind of thing. And then quick wins have their place. So one of the things that you can do right today is you can look at your hosting provider, let's just say, of your website, and you go, okay, is it, let's say, Black Knight because it runs off renewable energy? Is it 365? And at the moment, 365 do not run off renewable energy. So, and there's actually like a little there's a little website thing you can get which will track whether your website has green energy. But basically all it does is checks the server to see who you're on and if you're on a renewable energy provider. So these are all small things, but they are really, when we do them all together, they aggregate. And then define your commitment. So this is, okay, I want to be net zero by 2030. So that means that you do not, the the carbon emissions that you emit from all the functions and things that you do are brought down to zero. And there's a tiny little bit for what we call offsetting. So that's where you buy certain credits to offset your emissions, and then set a timeline. So, you know, if you say, okay, I'm going to be, by 2030, I'm going to be net zero, right? You need to work back. In sustainability, we call it backcasting, but it's like, okay, it's a bit like, you know, any strategic targets for your business. You set that timeline and you work back. And then monitor. So this is very important because, you know, you need to be checking, okay, so I've changed my LEDs, I've done all this, but if you don't set a baseline before you do that, you're not going to know that actually, yeah, I did save that €7 a year on each bulb that Sarah was talking about. So if you can look at your bills and how much did you spend, how much did you use, then you're going to know for next year where you're going. And then review. So again, you know, this is one of these things where, you know, every year we do our strategic planning, or we try to, and it's important to review that. So maybe you want to make it 6 months, maybe you want to make it annually. Where are we at? Did we do this? Did it work? And then change accordingly. Very, very important. So we are nearly done because I know we want to get to lots of questions. So my top tips are transparency. So a lot of people worry about this because, you know, they're worried of being accused of greenwashing, and what if I say this and people don't think I'm doing that? And I'm sure Claire can come in on this in a minute, but the Edelman Foundation has done an enormous amount of work on trust and how customers trust us and trust the brands that they use to be credible, to be environmentally friendly, to be all of these things. And if you are a brand that somebody can trust and you are transparent in what you do and you say, hands up, this is what we're doing. I'm not going to get to 100% organic cotton by next week, for sure. But what I am going to do is I'm going to start and I'm going to make some targets. And then secondly, if you have you know, a small team around you, like any small team, you'd want to recognize and reward them. So if they come up with sustainability ideas, then, you know, you need to reward them for that, or have one of those little, you know, anonymous you know, like post-it note boxes where they can kind of say, oh, look, actually, do you know what, this would be a really good idea. And then benchmark. So look around at your competitors and whatever, what are they doing? I think you'll find that a lot of people aren't doing anything. So what's really good here is, you know, look at what people are doing globally. Go find your business and go and find somebody globally who is being a leader in it, and have a look at what they do. However, I would say you are you and you are unique for what you do. You really do have, as Marie Forleo says, only that special gift that you can bring to the world. And the same can be said about your sustainability offering, right? Nobody else is going to have, you know, maybe the home office with the manufacturing, or the, you know, everyone's going to be different. So whilst you can look to others, I would also make it your own. And then just show commitment, because I think people really want to know that you have made a big goal, or that you're striving to do something better. They really find that important. And just a light-hearted little thing to finish on. We're going to do a little quiz if you're all still awake and haven't fallen down the sustainability sleep hole. We are going to do a little quiz to finish up and see who's going to be the winner. So only boiling the water you need saves enough energy to power the streetlights for how many months? Is it 7 months, a year, or 3 weeks? Only boiling the water you need, rather than filling up your kettle every time you're going to make 1 cup of tea, just put in the amount that you need. 7 months, 1 year, or 3 weeks. Okay, let's see. What did you think? 7 months. Well done to you 6 people. So let's see. Do I have a leaderboard? I'm not sure if I do. Let's see. I do. So let's see. Jen, Ted, who's going to be the overall winner? Looks like Jen. Way! Well done, Jen, for getting our questions right. So that is pretty much all I am going to rabbit on about, and we will come back into the room and hopefully answer some of your questions. So I think while we're here, I see a few, but what I'm going to do is I mentioned Clare, I think, there a couple of times. So I'm going to get her to come in and just talk us through maybe her ethos and background. Clare did start as wanting to be the very best and sustainable chocolate maker that she could ever be, but she's had some bumps, etc., along the way. So Clare, tell us about your journey and some of your hiccups and how you overcame them.
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. So I have a small chocolate business called Chocolatey Clare. And as Sarah said, I built the business on sustainability principles. So right from the start, it's the ethos of my business to have to minimize my impact not only on the planet for environmental in the environmental area, but also on other people and other animals who share the planet with us. So I had to choose my ingredients and my suppliers really carefully to make sure that their ethics matched my own, because it's very important to go back to the beginning, as you were saying earlier, Sarah, to the beginning of the supply chain, is to say, you know, I link in with suppliers who have a very high standard of ethics and who are involved with environmental or humanitarian projects on the ground, so that I am fully sure that all the workers right from the start are fairly treated and properly paid. And obviously the upshot of that is that your end product ends up being more expensive. But somebody put in a question of how you do communicate this to your potential consumers, which is quite tricky, because obviously if you're selling at a higher price point and it's not obvious that there's a reason for that, you have to, you know, come across on your packaging, on your website, on your other means that you communicate with people through your social media, and also align yourself with other businesses who match your ethics and your ethos. So for example, if you ship products out, who do you ship them with? For example, there's a shipping company that I now use called Eco Express, and they are fully electric fleet. So, you know, I have to ship products, so therefore I have to use some kind of energy for getting the products to people. Who do you look to do that? Another thing is, for example, because I'm shipping things, I use I linked in with a facility called EcoCart, which is just you know, that you can include it on your Shopify website, for example. And there are a few like this, but I just picked EcoCart, where they estimate your carbon footprint of the order, and you can either the customer or the business can buy the carbon offset of that, and that money is invested into very clearly defined projects around the world, like clean water systems or clean cooking facilities in certain parts of the world. So you can choose where to put the money. So whereas carbon offsetting is kind of it gets a little bit of a bad rep, because there can be an assumption that you can do anything you like as long as you offset it, you know, at the same time. Whereas that's not what I'm doing. I'm doing as much as I can, and what I can't avoid doing, I will try and offset. The other thing is, maybe that people don't know, is, you know, what banking system are you using? So most of the banks invest in petroleum-based projects. So, for example, I'm using an international mobile bank called N26, and they do not do that. So you can be sure that your money is being invested in ethical projects. Now, N26 is only suitable for sole traders, so they don't do limited companies, but they also do personal accounts. So basically, one of my mantras is to buy less but buy better, so that you can kind of be a little bit more comfortable through your investigation as well, that what you're buying is supporting a business that has a high standard of ethics, that has that treats its workforce correctly and pays people fairly, and in that way that you can kind of do as much as you can to minimize your impact on the planet.
Claire, could I just maybe step in there for a minute, just as you talk about kind of the purchasing? One of the questions we have here is about using recycled fabric and how sustainable that is. Now, I know the fabric, in terms of ethics and work practices, the fabric industry doesn't always have the best reputation, let's say, but maybe yourself or Sarah could give us some insight into the recycled fabrics in particular and how sustainable that may be.
Well, maybe you, Sarah. The only thing I would know is that obviously you're not using original resources. But Sarah, maybe you could take.
Yeah, I suppose I touched on that a little bit. I suppose this comes back to the circular economy, right? We live in a world that does take, make, waste. That's all my generation has definitely known. You know, you go to get a coffee and you know, you use the disposable cup and then you just put it in the bin. You don't think about where it goes or what happens to it. And when it comes to textiles, it's a similar kind of thing. You know, you go and buy the €6 t-shirt from Pennies, it rips because it's ridiculously thin cotton, and you wear it once and throw it away. The recycled content in textiles, in terms of us trying to draw all this plastic out of the massive gyres that are in the sea, is a credible and laudable exercise. However, I would say if you're embarking on a business that is to do with textiles, you really want to be looking at recycling and reuse rather than using recycled fibers. Like making I know there's a client of ours who are looking at making a fully recyclable fleece. So, you know, from the beginning to the outset. And polyester can be, you know, recycled. It's technically a little bit difficult, but it's not that bad. Cotton is better because it just depends how they mash the fibers together. And a lot of this, you know, none of it's done in Ireland. There's very little bit done in the UK. It's all done in like Portugal, Italy, and obviously far-flung places. So the problem is that if you start this, you're going to have to go down a very different route. There is also a company in Finland who are doing it for workwear, where, you know, you obviously buy a huge amount from them, you use them, and then once they become unusable from a garment point of view, you send it back to them and they mash the fibers and make it into new. So they're still using what we have rather than what we call downcycling. So plastic is only ever downcycled. It can't be in this loop like aluminium and glass can go round and round again. But unfortunately, plastic, you know, it's your plastic bottle, a pair of leggings, then nothing after that.
Coming back, I have two more questions I want to address, and I know we're kind of running tight on time, but just while we're on the subject of packaging, one of the questions here, maybe this one's for Claire, just quickly, in terms of colourful, sustainable packaging. A lot of the packaging we see is kind of like, you know, brown and basic. Can you maybe address that? And then we'll have a look at carbon emissions.
Yeah, so you can get what I'm using is a FSC certified board, and it's printed with an eco-friendly ink. So you can get any kind of colors. It doesn't make any visible difference to the customer whether it's an environmentally friendly ink or a petroleum-based ink. Obviously, for the environment, it's a huge difference that you're not using, you know, fossil fuels to basically with the ink. So quite a lot of printing companies would now say that they have eco-friendly inks, and that's, you know, it doesn't have to be a dull looking product because it's more environmentally friendly.
Okay. There's also a question there around online shopping, and I think we're all agreed that it's, you know, there's a huge amount of packaging coming in, and things are over packaged because they have a standard size packaging, but it's a very small item in it. You know, so our behaviour as consumers in terms of the sites we use and how we buy things, something we need to also to consider. But just in terms of, you know, in offsetting our actions where you need to buy something, unfortunately it comes in packaging that's not very, you know, planet friendly. You know, how do we offset kind of that action through using carbon emissions? And perhaps, you know, Sarah, if you could give us some examples of tools that may be used for that, could be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on, again, where you are. If you're buying it in and what the packaging is, and then when you're sending it out. I mean, Claire just touched on a couple of those things that she uses in terms of EcoCart. If you've Stripe payments on your website, Stripe have their own what we call offsetting. So they take the cost of, you know, the goods and sending it out or whatever, and then, you know, they make, you can get them to take a cost or a percentage out of the item's cost and put it towards offsetting. Now, the offsetting, and actually the other thing about offsetting is check out Vita.ie. It's an Irish charity, and they have what we call gold standard offsetting. And
how do you spell that, Sarah?
Vita, Vita.ie, Vita.ie. They're an Irish charity, and what they do is they build stoves for people. Obviously, open stoves are a huge thing. Carbon emissions go straight up in the air. And just one of their projects is, and I think for me, it's important because it empowers women, stops them having to go in forest and cut down stuff. It means that they can cook quicker because it's on a stove, it's not on an open fire, it doesn't take ages, but you really, like Claire said, you really, when you decide that you're going to offset your whatever it might be, if it's your packaging, all that kind of stuff, you really do need to look at gold standard credits. And tree planting very often isn't, because trees take at least 10 years before they properly start to draw down carbon. And if you know anything from Greta Thunberg or whatever, is that we don't have 10 years right now. Trees are brilliant, don't get me wrong. I'm very all for planting trees. And I did a TED talk on trees for pollinators. But in this instance, I think we need to look at what we can do like right now, what's immediate. So I hope that helps.
I like the way you introduced this in terms of strategy, that we need to be looking at it in terms of, you know, the strategy for the business, but also the fact that small hits and quick hits are kind of are essential also. I would like to, before we kind of get too tight on time, I'd just like to mention one of the offerings from the local enterprise office in terms of the Green for Micro programme for companies that maybe, you know, don't know where to start on it and want advice. This program, I think Leo Varadkar mentioned it in the introduction earlier on. The Green for Micro, through the Green for Micro program, you can get a specialist green consultant in to look at your operations for 2 days of free mentoring with a specialist green consultant to help you put a plan in place for how you can reduce your kind of like your energy costs and your waste. So I'm just going to drop that into the in the chat box for anyone that hasn't heard of it. You apply through that centrally through the local enterprise office /green, and then the application is sent to the relevant local enterprise office based on where you are. Sarah, is there anything else just in terms of the carbon offsets that companies should be looking at? I mean, what's your view in terms of, is it enough to offset, or should we really be doing something at the root? And again, I mean, like, I like the term greenwashing, and I think there's a fair bit of that around at the moment. So while companies may be looking at doing their offsetting, if they didn't do the action in the first place, they wouldn't need the offset. So what's your kind of view on that?
Yeah, well, I think there are obviously things that are nigh on impossible to avoid. Like you can't, you know, unless you've got your own wind farm at home, you can't generate your own electricity. So, you know, if you're on renewable electricity, you know, that's good. So you don't have to worry about offsetting it. But the reality is that we don't have enough renewable electricity in Ireland or on the grid to buy. But it's those kind of things where when you're thinking about how will my customers, you know, react to this? How will they take it if Claire says, you know, I'm going to just plant some trees? Like both Claire and I know that planting trees is a good thing, but it doesn't really help us in this, like, you know, the situation that we're in at the moment. So offsetting is very powerful, but I would say the first thing to do is looking at reducing. And in order to meet our energy targets, we're going to need to reduce what we use by 30% just to be able to, like, you know, meet the grid expectations. So yeah, I just noticed that somebody else asked me about Green Zebra there, and I'm just going to put a link. We are holding a webinar, a blueprint for a greener business in early November around COP26, which is obviously going to be huge. And I would just say, if anybody is thinking about doing anything for their business sustainability wise, myself and Claire here, we're on LinkedIn. Claire's going to be in her little booth for the afternoon. We're available, and we are more than happy to help people you know, just to field any questions and answer, helping them get on to their journey, basically.
Just can you? I missed something earlier on there when you were talking about the desktops are more energy efficient than laptops. Could you give me a bit, because again, you know, we've people that wouldn't necessarily be in a manufacturing or in a product type of context, but it's more service offering. And so for companies that are service-based businesses, maybe can you give us kind of like three top tips for kind of reducing?
The top tips there are presumably if you're professional services and you're at home or you're not working in a serviced office, I would say, you know, energy is your number one. So look at turning off all your appliances at the end of the day. Look at the energy, the hosting on your website. Is it renewable? You can even look at like digital. The digital footprint is huge. So I would look at digitally what you can do if you sell something. Look at, you know, doing the Stripe cart offsets or eco cart as Claire mentioned. And then lastly, I would look at educating the people that are your clients or customers and integrating that into, you know, your sessions. Be it if you're a coach or somebody like that and you're thinking, well, how do I make that relevant? I went to a cardiologist recently and the guy was like, it's all about health and wellness and just getting out there and appreciating nature. So even if you get somebody to start thinking about how they get to work differently, how they, do you know what I mean? All of that kind of thing can have a big impact.
Okay, thank you. Claire, do you have anything to add then before we wrap up?
Yes, I think a key immediate thing that people can do is just have a look around and see if they can reuse what they already have. Rather than saying, you know, chucking out a whole load of stuff, whatever it is, that's, you know, maybe there's a more sustainable alternative now available, but chucking out what you already have is really wasteful. So my, you know, opinion would be to all those boxes that maybe come in that where you buy something. I have a whole pile of boxes over here that you can't see. I keep them and I reuse them. So all of my orders that go out to customers go out in reused boxes that could be labeled something else entirely. And that's part of, you know, a circular thing that you can do. And customers don't mind that at all. In fact, I think people would prefer that. I think that the bike or the box, should I say, gets multiple uses. So that would be something that you could do.
Yeah, I think that's a great one.
Okay. Just doing a quick scan here to see if there's any more questions. And okay, this is a few questions around the. Sarah, did you say you did a TED talk? Do you have a TED talk, Sarah?
Yeah. So I did TED talk on 7 trees for pollinators. I'll see if I can find the link for that and put it in the chat. But yeah, it was basically about if you're going to buy a tree to put in your garden, if you're lucky enough to have a garden, or you use an outside space at work or whatever. So like these are all our native trees, like alder and things like that have, you know, they have brilliant flowers for bees and they have brilliant berries for birds and things like that. So, but that, you know, I made it so that it wasn't like you're planting an oak tree that's going to, you know, take over the house and cause subsidence or whatever.
And so, saying plant hawthorn and willow.
Yeah,
it's a thumbs up from Caroline. Okay, so we have about a minute to go. So I'd just like to take the opportunity to say thank you very much to Sarah and to Claire, and certainly given us some useful food for thought and insight. I'd also like to just say that if the lunchtime session from 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock, there's an energizer session, how to show up at your optimum best with Jerry Duffy. If you want to recharge and reboost, I would suggest you get over to that. Sorry, that runs from 1 until 1:30, and then we're back on the main afternoon session at 2 o'clock. So thank you all for your participation and your engagement and keeping the questions coming. Sarah's just put up the link to the TED Talk there, if anybody wants to pick that up before we close. And if there was any other links that you missed, I'd suggest maybe you just do a quick cut and paste and save the whole